design principle or core principle for designing algorithm? Any guesswork? Composition is nothing but a concept wherein you say that, okay, this is my algorithm which contains a sequence of steps, right? So these steps might be a statement by itself, right? It could be a sequential statements, right? You can have a conditional statement, you can have statement that is or set of statements that are iterative in nature, right? We have talked about this in the previous classes, right? So essentially the idea here is, when you say composition as a core principle for algorithm, you say that an algorithm is composed of different kinds of statements. Okay. Now one thing, here in the bracket I have specified sequential, conditional, iterative, right? I did not specify functions here, right? Now a function call by itself is also a statement, right? But that is, I did not put it here because, see, that is also a part of composition and that is also not. In order to differentiate another principle that we will see in the next slide, right? I have left off functions, but otherwise functions are also included as a part of this particular aspect, which is composition, because a function call itself is also a statement, right? So again, I repeat, composition is nothing but all the statements or the instructions that you have in the particular algorithm, and you can view it something like this, right? All the statements which are of different type or different nature are all composed up so that it solves a particular task, right? Hence you say composition, right? So as an example, right, say we want to find the minimum of two numbers, right? Say for example, for simplicity, if we have this kind of notation that denotes the minimum of a and b, right? So we can write something like this, right? A simple algorithm. We have a function minimum a comma b. Your input is a and b, and you have your steps. If a is less than b, you say result equal to a. Otherwise, you say result is equal to b, right? And then you say result equal to the minimum of a and b. Since we have used a kind of notation, this arrow mark pointing downwards denotes your minimum of a and b. All right. So your algorithm is now composed of simple statements like assignment statement, conditional statement here, right? So far so good, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So far we have seen specification and composition. The next principle is decomposition, right? Now decomposition is nothing but divide and conquer kind of. So there is a principle generally which is widely used in programming and algorithms, which is called as divide and conquer approach, right? So this kind of approach is like you break a very big problem into small problems, right? And then combine those, right, to solve the problem. That is generally the idea behind divide and conquer approach, right? Now here, decomposition actually kind of means, right, you write your small functionalities independently and separately in functions, right, and call those functions. Hence you say your algorithm is decomposed.
Sir,
Yes.
one second, sir. Little bit.
Yeah.
That's what, sir. Decomposition, sir. Say one.
Yeah. Decomposition. You got it, or you want me to repeat the definition once again?
Repeat, sir.
Yeah. So decomposition is nothing but you solve your individual tasks within the main problem to be solved as separate functions. Okay, so you write your own separate functions, right, and call those particular function within the program wherever and whenever needed. So that is the concept of decomposition. As you can see here, divide your main algorithm using functions, develop them separately, and call them.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you show the previous slide once?
Sure.
But that is essentially a function, right, sir? Decomposition, because function, what that the function does the same job, right? Break the program into different blocks and then execute them. So why a separate name for it?
No, it
You get
is.
my question?
Yeah, I got your question. It is just that if you make use of the concept of modularity, so when your program has got the concept of modularity, you say that your algorithm or program is decomposed or structured. And when I say modularity, you try to break your part of the program into separate functions as far as possible and then call them. Am
Yes.
I clear, kind of?
Little, okay, so little.
Okay, I will just show you an example. You can have the understanding better.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, somebody asked for this slide. Any doubts here?
No doubt, sir. I just want to see the program. That's it.
Okay, so let us now see an example for decomposition. As you can see here, say for example, we want to check whether a triangle is right angled or not, right? So whether a triangle is right angled given its three sides A, B and C, with C the longest side, right? So we know that the triangle is right angled if C square is equal to A square plus B square, correct? So as a very simple example in this particular case, right, if you want to write a program or an algorithm, right, now this square thing could be a separate function that you can write and call it whenever it is required, right? So this particular thing, right, that is finding the square of a particular number could be a separate function that you can write, right, and then call it within the algorithm or the program, right? So this concept is called as decomposition, wherein you put the functionality or the sub-functionality of the main program into a separate box, right? So this idea is sometimes also called as a black box.
Yes, I got it.
Okay, now if you see the understood.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, now if you see the complete algorithm, something looks like this, right? So the function name is right angled A comma B comma C, right? And you have got the inputs such that the property C is greater than or equal to A and greater than or equal to B, right? And you see here, you say if square C, you have not defined what is this square within the algorithm, right? This square is defined separately on its own, right? So if square C is equal to square A plus square B, you say result equal to true, otherwise false, right? And then you output the result, right? With the condition that the result is either true or false accordingly. All right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is decomposition. So I repeat once again, there are three core principles when you actually kind of design algorithms, which is considered to be a best practice, which are specification, composition, and decomposition.
Sir, shouldn't it not be greater than or equal to, sir? Shouldn't it be greater than, sir?
Which one?
Because in right angle triangle we can't have the third side equal to the rest of the two sides, sir.
Correct, correct. The property here you're saying, right? Second line.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mean to say like C greater than A and C greater than B. You mean to say it cannot be equal to, correct?
Yes, exactly, sir.
Yeah, correct. So that was a typo here that you can correct it. So hope you understood the concept, all of you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So guys, we are done with unit 1.
Sir, what about function, sir? You say that function is not included in composition.
Correct.
And you said you'll be telling the reason in the upcoming slide. Why is not function is included in composition, sir?
No, okay. You mean to ask like function is not included in composition, right?
Why is not included? That's my question.
Why it is not included in composition directly? Because if it is a kind of built-in function, right, that is fine, right? Even otherwise, if it is a defined function and if you call it, right, you can definitely specify function within composition. But here in this particular case, I did not specifically put it because we wanted to understand decomposition. Understood. We wanted to understand decomposition, so we have put it. So it is equally correct to put functions here.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So because when you call a function, it is also a statement, right? And your entire program is composed of all the statements. And your statement could be as simple as an assignment statement or a function call.
Yes, sir. Understood.
Yeah. Okay, there's a typo. All right, guys. So we are done with Unit 2. Let's get started with, we are done with Unit 1. Let's get started with Unit 2.
Okay, sir.
So this is your syllabus. Just see if we have covered all the topics. We did not miss any, right, in Unit 1. Algorithms, building blocks, statements, state, control flow, function, pseudocode, flowchart, programming language, specification, composition, decomposition, iteration, and recursion. Okay, now let us start with Unit 2, which is data, expression, statement, conditional. All right, so let us get started with data types, right? Assuming that all of you guys have gone through the video of introduction to Python, right? And understood the concept, right? So let us understand data types in Python now. So before we actually start with Unit 2 data types, right? I just repeat or ask once again, any kind of doubts or any difficulty in understanding any of the concepts in Unit 1? Hope things are all clear.
Sir, in the paradigms of
Paradigms of programming language.
yes, sir. Which category does Python fit into, sir? Is it the jack of all trades? Is it like all of them or just one of them, sir?
You tell me.
I think it's all of them, sir.
It's kind of all of them. Yes, it is procedural, it is imperative, it is
Procedural,
declarative.
functional.
Yeah, it is functional, it is object oriented, right? So it is basically it is a purely object oriented language, and you write it in a procedural manner, right? It also supports functional style. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
so you mentioned a typo before. What is a typo?
Typo, yeah, somebody said like right angle triangle input, this cannot be greater than or equal to. So this was the typo.
So it cannot be only greater than. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anything else, guys, before we actually get started with data types in Python?
Sir,
Shall we? Yeah. Somebody has a question.
Python will not support scripting, sir.
Python will not support scripting. You can make use of Python to write scripts. It supports, right? You can do repetitive or automate tasks using Python scripts. That is also possible.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
can you go a bit slower while you teach, sir? Because it's hard to catch what you're saying.
Definitely. I will reduce my gears.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Sir,
Yeah.
so what do you mean by the black box, sir?
Black box essentially means that it is a separate unit on its own. Hence, we say it as a black box.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Sir,
Yes.
what are we supposed to do with the books, sir? Like, is the material which you upload on LMS is enough to study, or the books should be referred in any way? It's just for our reference, sir. Or will you tell anything about it?
For your reference, I would suggest that the material uploaded in the LMS is more than sufficient. Plus, apart from that, if you want to have further reading so that you can understand stuff better, I always would recommend to go with the official documentation available in python.org rather than having a textbook.
Okay,
Again,
sir.
that's a personal call that you can take. Yeah, somebody likes to have the fundamentals understand by using books. So my personal experience, I recommend going with the official documentation, because see, new features come and new releases come again and again, right? So your
Yes.
book might be with, say for example, with Python 3.5 or 2.7 or something like that. Still the fundamentals probably may remain the same, but the new features may not be available in the book, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I would recommend to bookmark the python.org/documentation page and have it as a ready reference anytime.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Are we all ready for the next unit, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so starting unit 2, till the end of the course, it is all going to be applied learning kind of, right? Every concept that we will be learning is going to be applied. In the sense, I'm going to show you the concept and its explanation and the meaning in a real-time fashion, right?
Okay,
Starting with unit 2, data types, right? So let us understand data types in float, boolean, string, list here. Okay, so here I'm in Visual Studio Code. Hope all of you are able to see this particular screen, Visual Studio Code.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so I have put a folder called as unit 2, right? And this is introduction to Python, right? So this video has been uploaded in YouTube, right? So before we actually get started with the data types, right? It is something like it's this particular part is a prerequisite for understanding data types and your further classes, right? So before we actually proceed, right, guys, any doubts with these points and in understanding the video introduction to Python? In introduction to Python, these were the concepts that were explained in that particular video. Do you want me to kind of repeat it once again, the entire stuff, or have you guys understood, or if you have any kind of difficulty in understanding any particular point?
Sir, can you just brush up the topic?
Yes, sir. Can you just explain?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let us go through all these particular topics once again, right? So that you understand getting started with Python concept better. So the first topic is OO, right? So see, basically I'm a lazy man. Sometimes I make use of acronyms, right? So OO actually stands for object orientation, right? We have seen a paradigm of programming language called as object oriented programming, right?
Yes, sir.
So Python is basically, right, object oriented programming language. Everything in Python is an object, right? So again, I repeat, guys, please, have you all done a refresher on the 4 pillars of object orientation earlier in one of my earlier classes? I said, right? Please do a refresher on object orientation. Have you guys looked into the concepts of polymorphism, inheritance, encapsulation, and abstraction?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so see, this is required for understanding of all the other programs and the concepts that we will be seeing, right? Object oriented or object orientation per se is directly not a part of your syllabus. So anything with respect to classes, objects, create an object, create a class, right? Or something like that is not going to be asked in your tests and examination, right? But since Python is an object-oriented programming language, you definitely need to have the understanding so that you understand the concepts better, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that was point 1, right? Point 2 is something about the creator of the language, right? So Python was created during late 1980s, right, by a guy called as Guido van Rossum, right? So he is the creator of the Python language. And Python is free and open source, right? Now, what do you mean by free and open source?
The code is available for all to see, sir.
Correct. Python language itself is free, right? And the code is available, and it has got different implementations available. You have got C implement. Pardon?
To modify the code and redistribute it also free and open
Yeah,
source.
correct. You can modify the code and redistribute it. You can have a special kind of flavor of Python. You can have a compiler created specifically for using a particular language for the Python, right? So, for example, the compiler that we will be using or you guys are using to execute your Python programs is a C implementation. Python compilers are implemented using various different languages, right? So there is a C implementation of Python, Java implementation of Python, etc. Okay, so yes, as you guys correctly said, the source code is totally open. You can contribute to the community, right? And it could be redistributed, right? Hence the name free and open source are sometimes called as FOSS. Okay, now along this similar lines, free and open source, please also keep in mind that things with respect to softwares, things that are all free need not be open source. Okay, whereas things that are open source are free. What do you mean by that? When I say things that are or softwares that are free need not be open source, give an example.
Sir, this open office thing, it's an alternative to Microsoft Office.
Yeah, something like that. So open office thing or any other tool like a VLC media player or something like that, that you can download and use it for free, but the source code may not be available in a repository. Right? So that is called as free and not open source, right? And things that are open source or for the software for which you have got the source code available freely, they are free as well, free to use, right? So that is free and open source. And BDFL. So BDFL is kind of a prestigious award kind of thing. You can think of something like that. It's not an award, but it is a kind of a very huge or global recognition given to persons who contribute and do stuff a lot with respect to open source stuff, right? And this guy, Guido van Rossum, right, was affectionately called as the BDFL, right? BDFL actually stands for Benevolent Dictator for Life. Okay, you can just do a Google for BDFL and see like the other names that are also available, right? So there are so many other names apart from Guido van Rossum, right, who actually contribute to the open source community, right? So that is point number 2. Any doubts in this second point? This is for your information kind of.
No doubts.
Okay. And your third point is, right, as we have seen in the previous discussion, right, Python supports what is called as an interactive mode called as REPL, right? So you guys now tell me what is REPL or what is the expansion for REPL?
Read, evaluate.
Read, evaluate.
Print loop.
Print loop. Fantastic. And how do you invoke REPL? You just say Python 3.
Plus Python 3. Terminal.
Correct. And hit enter. What you get here is called as a REPL prompt. Okay. So here you can do all kinds of calculations, right? So this is an interactive mode called as REPL.
Sir, but when I use the Python 3 commands, it takes me to the Microsoft Store, sir, even though I have Python installed.
Yeah, you need to check your particular configuration. If it is in Windows, I think try typing Python rather than Python 3.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So that is your third point, REPL. Your fourth point is PEPs and GENs, right? Now, PEPs are nothing but think of PEPs as written documents. They are specifications for the Python language, right? Now, this PEPs actually stand for Python Enhancement Proposals, right? So Python enhancement proposals are kind of documentations that say about that particular language's features, right? So that is PEP. And the other one is Zens, right? Think of Zens as something like best practices or kind of touchstones that you guys follow, right? Whenever you write a Python language. Okay? So those are PEPs and Zens, right? In fact, these Zens available as a part of one of the PEPs. I really do not kind of remember which PEP. There are so many PEPs available, right? Standard PEPs and other PEPs available, informational PEPs, etc. Right? And these PEPs has got numbers like 4, 5. I think Zen is a part of PEP 8, if I am not wrong, but I'm not kind of very sure. You can check that out. Zens are a part of a particular PEP having a particular number, right? And in fact, these Zens, I said Zens are nothing but best practices or touchstones, right? So these Zens or best practices can be seen through your REPL also, right? So what you can do here is you can go to your Python REPL mode, and from your REPL prompt you can give or issue something like import this, right, and hit enter. What you see here are all the Zens, right? Now these Zens are specified by Tim Peters, and these are all the Zens or best practices that you guys can follow. All right, now these Zens, as you see here, beautiful is better than ugly, explicit is better than implicit, etc. We will appreciate this as we learn the language, right, and become comfortable more with the language, right? For example, one Zen that I can say which is related to what we have already seen is something like readability counts. Okay, so you make use of indentation, you make use of appropriate indentation levels, right? So that is considered to be a good practice, right? And that practice makes a particular program to be much more readable, right? Hence you say this as a best practice. Readability counts. Unlike other programs or other programming languages like C++, Java, right, wherein you make use of curly braces, right? So here there is no curly braces, no semicolons, etc., right? And your particular program or your Python program is much more readability or readable. Okay, so these are the Zens. And your next point is, right, the versions of Python, right? Python actually started with version 2 and it received major revisions, right, throughout its life cycle, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, etc., right? But now the latest version is 3, and it is always recommended to make use of the latest version, right? Or in fact Python 3 rather than Python 2, right? Because for one thing, right, Python 3 is not directly compatible or backwards compatible with Python 2, unlike some other programming languages wherein future versions are backward compatible with previous versions. In Python, right, Python version 3 is not backwards compatible with Python version 2. Understanding what I am trying to say here in this particular point?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as I've already said, right, readability counts, right, and unlike other languages, there is no semicolon to specify the end of a statement or an instruction, right? You don't make use of any semicolon, right? The statement itself is, when you complete the statement and hit enter, that itself means that a particular instruction is over. And for your code blocks, right, there is no curly braces, right? You make use of indentation rather. So far so good?
Yes, sir.
All right. And as I said, you can download Python from this official website, right? And you can bookmark this particular link, right, for your documentation, right? Python documentation is your best place to have any kind of doubts cleared with respect to using the features of the language. And then let us understand the structure of a Python language, right? So let us start with a hello world program, right? So hello world, printing the version of your system, we can make use of a module, right? Hello world, and if underscore name is equal to underscore main. So do you want me to repeat this particular concept again? I think we have seen this particular concept in the previous
Yes,
class.
sir, we remember this. You taught us.
Yeah, you remember this, right? So let us understand this shebang line, right? Okay, so I am just ignoring these parts now. Hello world. You want me to tell this part? Print the Python version of your system. How can you print the Python version of your system? You can make use of a module called as platform.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so you can make use of a module called as platform and invoke a particular method under platform, which is called as something like Python version or Python underscore version. So you can say platform.python underscore version, that will give you the Python version of your system. All right, so try to do that on your own. Will you do that?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Okay.
can you explain the name equal to main part again? Just as a reminder.
Yeah, sure. So let us see name is equal to main part again, and let us talk something about shebang line as well. All right, so I am in unit 2, so let me create a file under this folder. Say test.py, right? And let us understand with this part, name is equal to main. Okay, so for name is equal to main, I would like to say that this particular statement, if name is equal to main, right? This statement or a conditional check you do so that you ensure or you just check whether the current program that you are executing is the main program or not. That is the reason for this particular condition. The reason for this particular condition is to check whether the current program is the main program that will be executed or not, right? Now, when you say or not, what else can you do if it is not the main program that can be executed? What you can do is you can have your particular program work as a library that could be used in some other program. All right, so this is the reasoning for this particular statement or line or a conditional check, right? Now let us understand this particular reasoning that I have said through a very simple example, right? So let me include this. If underscore name is equal to main, and then let me define a function called as main, right? And write something here, right? Now please remember, now this underscore name is a built-in keyword that is available within Python compiler, right? Which has the value underscore main, right? So if you want to check that, you can go into REPL, and from within REPL, say underscore name, it says the value is underscore main. All right, so underscore name has got a value underscore main, right? So if you do this particular conditional check, right, you are just ensuring that, or you are just explicitly telling that this is the main program that I am going to execute. All right, think of this concept similar to your public static void main in Java. If you don't say public static void main and just if you write the instructions in Java, will it execute? It will not execute, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Whereas here, even if you don't say underscore name is equal to main and you write the instructions, it is going to be, or the Python will execute those particular instructions, because by default underscore name is equal to main for every program. That means that any file that you write, by default, Python understands that, okay, this is the main program that I will be executing. So it executes, right? But sometimes, or when you write complex programs, right? Or when you become more comfortable with programs, right? Or writing programs, you will be slowly writing libraries. So when you say something like import platform or import math, that means that math is a module or library that is already available in your kit and you are making use of the features of math, right? So during the course of your Python journey, at one point in time, if a case arises wherein you need to write your own library, in that particular case, that particular library should not be executed as the main program. So in your library, or when you write a library, you will not include this. That is because when you write a library, your idea is to make use of that particular library somewhere else, or to distribute your particular library, say to your friends or to a repository. So far, so good, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now coming back, in this particular program, I am saying that, or I am just indeed making a check that this is the main program, right? And I am explicitly saying that, okay, I know this particular condition is going to be true. I am explicitly saying that, okay, this is the main program that I will be executing, right? So I call this, and then in line 1, I define this, right? So here, I can say print, say underscore underscore name. Okay, if I save this and if I run this program, now note here, guys, as I run this particular program, right? Note this particular part here in the navigation pane. As I say Python 3 test.py, I should be in the same location where the program is written. So let me ensure that first. So I do a pwd. I see that I am inside unit 2, and inside that I am in 01 intro, right? But my program is under 02 types, right? So what I need to do is I need to do a cd space dot dot, right, to go one level up. So from 01 intro, right, I will be going to this particular location, unit 2, right? So for that you do a cd space dot dot, right? And then if I look into my directory or location, I see now that I am in unit 2. Okay, so under unit 2, I have a folder called as 02 types, right? So what I can do here is, so I need to go into 02 types. So to go into a particular folder from within a particular folder, you say cd. cd means change directory. Okay, so you say cd and then space your name of the folder. Name of the folder is 02 types, and hit enter. And when you say pwd, as you can see here, I am now inside 02 types within unit 2. Okay, so within unit 2, right, I am inside 02 types, which contains my file test.py, which I want to execute. So what I will do is, now I can execute my program. So before I execute my program, let me double check that the file is indeed available inside this particular directory. So I can do a ls. So if I do a ls in Windows, you will do a dir, right? If I do a ls, right, you can see your input.txt, your two data types.txt, but you cannot see this test.py. So where is this test.py?
Inside data types.
Inside unit 2. It is, as you can see here, it is inside unit 2, and where we are. Okay, we are inside 02 types. Okay, so and our test.py is inside unit 2, correct? So what we need to do now, guys, tell me. We need to go one level up, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you can go one level up by doing a cd space dot dot. right? So this will go one level up. That is from this particular location 02 types, right, to this location unit 2, right? Now if I do this and do ls al, now you can see test.py. I am in the correct location, right? So whenever you try to run your Python files or programs, please ensure that you are in the correct location, right? So now I am in the correct location, right, which is unit 2. Now I can say Python 3 followed by space followed by test.py, right? And you can see the output is underscore underscore main, right? This is for the purpose of illustration and understanding the need for name is equal to underscore main when it is being executed as a main program and when it is used as a library. When it is used as a library, right, the name will not be underscore underscore main, but the name will be the name of the file itself. For example, if this particular file is going to be used as a library somewhere else, right, the value of underscore underscore name will be test. Understanding, guys? I will illustrate that now, but conceptually, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, now let us use this particular functionality, right, as a library in some other program, right? So we are in unit 2, right? So under unit 2, let me create another file called as test2.py, right? And within test2.py, let me make use of the functionality in test.py, right? So to make use of the functionality in some other file, right, you say import, right? And the name of the library or the module that you want to make use of, right? So this particular file, when it gets used as a library somewhere else, right, you need not specifically say .py, or you should not be saying .py. You just say the name of the file, test. All right. So the idea here is, right, now this test2.py will be my main program, and this is not going to be my main program. Okay. So what you generally do is you remove this. So the idea here is you have written a library with one function, right, with one statement, right, and this particular function is going to be used somewhere else, right? So in this particular case, that means that this program is going to be used as a library in this particular program. Hence you say import test, right? And this particular program test2.py is your main program or main file, right? So what you do here is you can do a underscore underscore main and call main, and then somewhere up after you import your module, you can define the main, and then you can invoke the functionality available in this particular module, which is called as main. So to invoke this particular function main, which is available inside a test, you say test.main. All right. So you are making use of the functionality main that is available in this particular file, in this particular program, right? And this particular program is your main program. Now, if I run test2.py, right? See, the name is test. Is it clear now? So when this is being used as a library, the value of underscore underscore name is test, not underscore underscore main.
Okay, sir.
And did you guys notice this particular part? I said, please notice this particular part when I execute the commands, right? Did you notice anything different, or anything that got generated automatically which was not there before?
PyCache.
PyCache.
PyCache, right? So remember our discussion on compilers and interpreters?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Python is compiled and interpreted, I said, right? And when you run a particular program, you are able to see the output directly, right? So this particular program gets compiled. In fact, it gets compiled, right? And the compiled bytecode is interpreted by the Python interpreter. That happens automatically. And that was our reasoning in the previous class, wherein we say that Python is an interpreted language. It is so fast. You do not take your take the object code, sorry, the bytecode, and give it to the interpreter, right? So the bytecode that gets generated, right, is stored in __ PyCache, right? So if you see under PyCache, you can see something called as test.cpython39.pyc, right? Now this is your bytecode. All right, now if I click this, right, now this file is in a format that is either in binary or uses an unsupported text coding. So this is in a particular format, right, that will be understood only by the Python interpreter. If I say open it anyway, right, now this is not for us to understand, this is for the Python interpreter to understand. Understood, all of you? So please keep this in mind, right? And this is the proof for Python is a compiler, or Python is both compiled and interpreted. Any doubt so far?
No, sir.
Okay, so we have seen this part once again. So we are done with this. And let us revisit shebang line. Do you want me to tell what a shebang? Somebody said they wanted to see shebang line once again, right? So let us understand shebang line. Now, what is this shebang line? Now, shebang line is a line which is typically a kind of comment. Comment in Python are written using this symbol, right? So this is a comment. This is not understood by your compiler or interpreter, right? Using a hash symbol, you write a comment. Okay, guys?
Okay, sir.
Now, shebang line is a kind of comment, right, which is very special for Unix-based systems only, right? Now, this is not for Windows systems, right? Now, this is typically for Unix-based systems. Even if you are using a Windows system and if you have Bash available in Windows 10 supports Bash, right? So, if you have got the Bash shell available, you can use this particular idea also, shebang line, right? Now, shebang line, before we see it in action, let me tell you the functionality. This particular line, if used, right, should be used or must be used as the very first line in a Python program. I repeat once again, if this particular line, I will tell you the functionality or meaning of this particular line soon, but the rule. The first rule is, if this particular line is to be used in a Python program, this particular line should be the very first line in the Python program. And this line is similar to a comment, right, which is understood by the Python interpreter, right, so that if specified as the first line, right, you need not invoke the Python interpreter or the compiler specifically. This is the definition. Okay, so shebang line ensures that if it is used in the program, you need not invoke the Python interpreter or compiler directly. That means to say that, see, earlier we had something called as test2.py and we executed something like this, right? We say Python 3 test2.py, correct?
Sir.
Yeah. If you have a shebang line included within your Python program, right, you need not explicitly say this line. You need not say this Python 3. you can just say /test2.py and it will run. Okay, let me show you that now. So let us come to this program. So I said shebang line. What is the rule? It is a particular line. If it is going to be included, it should be the first line in the program. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is my first line. And this particular line looks something like this. As I said, it is a kind of comment. So it is a comment. But unlike a comment, after this particular symbol, you put a exclamation mark, right? And specify something. What you specify here after the exclamation mark is the path to your Python 3 interpreter. Okay, so you can specify, or you must specify the location or the path to the Python interpreter that is available in your system. So what you guys need to do is you need to find out the location where you have installed Python 3 or Python 2 or whatever, right? So in my system, to know my path, or in Unix based systems to know my path, you can make use of a command called as which, right? So see, I am making use of a command called as Python 3, right? And it gives me a REPL prompt, right? Now I want to know where this particular, or what is the location of this particular interpreter, where this particular command lives in my system, right? So in Unix based systems, you can make use of a command called as which, right? You can say which Python 3. That means that you are asking the system, where is Python 3, or which Python 3 are you using, right? So you are asking the system. So this gives me an answer with the current location. So this is my location of Python 3, right? User local bin Python 3 in my system. So your location may be different. So find out the location, copy that particular location, right? And put it here after exclamation mark. All right. After this, right, to illustrate shebang line in action, right? What I can do is I can have a very simple program. Say I follow the best practice, right? So I have this particular condition and I say that this is my main program, right? And inside my main program, let me just print a hello world. All right, so this is a very simple program, right? And where is this available? Test.py, it is in the same location, right? Unit 2, right? And we are in Unit 2, all right. And if I do a ls minus al, I can still see test.py. Now the general way to execute a particular Python program is Python 3 space, sorry, test.py. There's a typo. Right, we get hello world, right? Now what you can do now is, if you have this particular line, which is called as the shebang line, this line is called as the shebang line, right? It is called as shebang line because, right, it starts with a hash, right? And then this symbol is also sometimes called as a bang symbol, right? Exclamation mark is also sometimes called as a bang symbol, right? So put together hash bang, shebang, sometimes like that, hence the name shebang, hash bang, right? Okay, so that is regarding the name shebang. Now to see the usefulness of this particular line, right, I can directly invoke test.py if it is executable. I do not know whether it is already executable or not. If it has got the appropriate permission, what I can do here is, instead of saying Python 3 test.py, I can directly say /, that is, you're running something from the current location. So that is with respect to Unix based systems, you do a /, right? /test.py. Okay, it says permission denied, right? That means that in Unix-based system, by default, whenever you create a file, right, you do not have executable permissions, right? So what you can do here is to change the permission so that you can execute this particular system, execute this particular file, right? If you are in a Unix system, right, there are two ways, right? One thing is you can explicitly say it with a sudo, right, and then /test.py, saying that, okay, I am now the root user, right? I have permissions for all the files, right? So you can do that, right? And it will ask you for the password, right? Command not found. Okay, so here it is not /, you can just say test.py, right? It is saying command not found. I do not know.
Just the backward slash, sir, without the dot.
It is just the backward slash without the dot.
I'm not sure. I'm
No,
just
it is,
asking.
no, it is not that way, I think. It says command not found. Okay, so even if I say sudo, it's not trying to get that because I am not giving any particular command, right? See, Python 3 is a particular command. Now I am just saying sudo, but I am not giving any command here. I am just saying test.py. But this test.py has got this interpreter set as the first line, right? So it is not getting understood, right? So let us try to execute it in a different manner by giving the permission explicitly, right? So as you can see here, let me clear this. If you do this, right, it says permission denied, and with sudo it said command not found. Let us now try to give a explicit permission or executable permission to this particular file and try it out, right? So for that, you can make use of a command called as chmod, right, or chmod, right, or that actually means change the mode, right? So change the mode of your particular file. The file name is test.py, right? Change the mode of this particular file, right, but make it executable. What you can do is you can do a +x. +x means give executable permission to this particular file, right? Now let us try. Now if I give executable permission, okay, now that it is having the appropriate permission, if I try it now, it says hello world, right? I am now not saying Python 3 test.py. I am just telling the file name and I get the output correctly, right? So that is the advantage of shebang line. Got it, guys?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, so that was shebang line.
Sir, so
Yeah.
shebang line is used when you have multiple interpreters, sir, so that you can specify what interpreter to use. Instead,
Yeah, you can put it that way also. If you have multiple interpreters and if you want to run a particular program through a particular interpreter without specifying that particular command explicitly, yes, you can make use of a shebang line as well.